Muy buenas noches a todos. ¿Qué tal? Bienvenidos hoy a este webinar. Estamos presentando entre Prep Securities y el CFA Institute. Es para nosotros, la verdad, una gran alegría. Rob Langrick, quien es el Chief Product Advocate del CFA Institute, nos pueda dar esta pequeña charla con respecto al papel de la certificación CFA en Latinoamérica. Y un poquito antes de iniciar, quería contarles rápidamente sobre nuestra empresa. Bueno, Prep Securities es una empresa de capacitación en finanzas. Se especializa principalmente en lo que son cursos de preparación para la certificación CFA y somos CFA Institute Prep Providers. Esto quiere decir que estamos inscritos con el CFA Institute para poder dar cursos de preparación. Ya tenemos más de 12 años en el mercado y de verdad que ha sido un camino muy largo el que nos ha llevado hasta hoy, ¿no? En que podemos tener este webinar junto con Rob. Así que, sin más, presentar a Rob. Él tiene la certificación CFA y CIPM. Es, como dije, Chief Product Advocate del CFA Institute y continuamente está viajando por el mundo justamente promoviendo todo lo que es la certificación CFA. Antes de iniciar, solamente un detalle. La charla va a ser en inglés, pero tengan en cuenta que, bueno, hoy con la tecnología pueden en Teams poner subtítulos, ¿ok? Pueden poner subtítulos tanto en inglés como en español. Y si es que es de su preferencia, pueden seguirlo de esa forma. Para los que no lo tienen tan claro, por aquí tengo, a ver, cómo hacerlo. Se los pongo, se los voy a poner en el chat, por si alguno tiene dudas de cómo se ponen los subtítulos. Ahí están en el chat las instrucciones. Y pueden poner, como digo, subtítulos tanto en inglés como en español. Si alguien tiene alguna consulta, la pueden hacer por el chat, pero las consultas se van a responder al final, ¿ya? La charla aproximadamente va a durar una media hora y luego vamos a tener una sesión de preguntas y respuestas para terminar. Entonces, ahora sí, sin más, dejo a Rob. We can go ahead, Rob.
Perfect. Thanks for the intro, Victor, and good evening to everybody. I'm sitting here in New York City, and I'm very happy to be here working with you at Prep Securities, talking about my favorite subject, which is CFA program, but also providing some interesting information about our footprint in Latin America. So what I'm going to do, let me share my screen, and I'm going to show my presentation here and walk through it. So as Victor said, I'll take about half an hour or so to go through this, maybe a bit less, and then we will do questions at the end. So hopefully you can see my screen here, the white screen, the background. Let's go right in. Okay, so let's talk about CFA Institute briefly. For those not familiar with CFA Institute, we're a global not-for-profit. We're mission-driven. Our goal is to lead the investment profession by promoting ethics, education, and professional excellence. And we're the world's largest association of investment management professionals globally. We have over 200,000 CFA charter holders. In terms of the footprint, interestingly, in the Americas, half of all the charter holders are in the Americas, over 100,000 across 92 societies. There are many societies in Latin America, by the way. And also many affiliated universities. We partner with universities in many cases around the world, including in Latin America. So I'm going to answer a few basic questions here today about our flagship product, the CFA program. So who are these 200,000 people? What jobs do they do? Why did they start the CFA program? What do we cover? What do we teach you in the CFA program? And how can you take the CFA program yourself if you wish? I'll also walk through a few program innovations as well. And then we'll switch gears and talk about a bit about Latin America as we go through. So first, who has the CFA charter? Well, let's begin there, actually. Let's go to the Bloomberg terminal quickly. I'm pulling up my Bloomberg, and I'm going to show you CFA charter holders in Latin America. So if I go to the people database, PEOP people, let me show you, let's just start with Peru, and then we'll show a few more countries. If I choose location Peru, for example, like that, then I can see that there are almost 4,000 finance professionals here. If in education I say, you know what, I want to narrow down to CFA charter holders, type in CFA, then we're down to 39 people here. So there are 39 people on the database who are CFA charter holders in Peru. And I can sort by alphabetical order the firms: BBVA, Banco Central de Reserva del Peru, Citibank Peru, Conexa, Fondos Sura, and Prima AFP, Pro Futuro, Scotiabank, Peru, etc. You can also see the green dot. Here's Rolando, who is the Chief Investment Officer of a fund. And you can even find more information about them. So if I look at this individual here, I can see their address, their email address. It's a really good networking tool. I can see that they got the CFA in 2012, and they went to University of Pacific in 2005, London Business School 2010, and so on. It's a really powerful networking tool. But look at the sort of job roles of the people here. So if I sort by job role, you can see the sorts of job roles CFA charter holders have in Peru. The fixed income trader, portfolio manager, trader, and so on. Now, if I switch to, let's say, Brazil, if I just type in Brazil here, Brazil, I'll type in the American spelling maybe. There we go, Brazil. Here we go, 335 CFA charter holders in Brazil, many of them online, the green dot, by the way. And if we sort by firm again, alphabetical order, you see where they work. Lots of very big, prestigious firms, BNP Paribas, Banco Bradesco, HSBC, and so on and so forth. And you can also sort by job role. So analysts, lots of analysts, CEO, chief financial officer, director, and so on and so forth, equity research analyst, heads of desks, and so on. And I can keep doing this, right? I can then say Uruguay, for example. Do the same again. I see there are 19 charter holders here, and you can see the firm they work for there. Or come to Chile, just like this, for instance. So you can see it's a very powerful database, the Bloomberg terminal. But more importantly, look at the caliber of people who have the CFA charter in all these countries in Latin America. You can see some very big, important people: portfolio managers, traders, and so on, CEOs. And you can also see, I know Hugo Arevno, by the way. You can also click in and see more information on it. So I work with Hugo. He was on my education advisory committee at CFA Institute, I remember. It's nice to see a familiar name here. But anyway, you get the point. The point is it's a very powerful network of finance professionals globally, including in Latin America. So let's ask the question now, what do CFA charter holders do? What job role do they have? Who has the CFA charter? So this is the way we think about job roles in finance at CFA Institute. We think about 4 different quadrants or corners. Buy side, that's people who invest money. Sell side, people who advise the buy side. You've got corporations in the bottom left corner, and then you've got advisors in the bottom right corner. Now, these yellow bubbles are proportional to the number of CFA charter holders who do each job role. So the first thing you notice is the biggest bubble in the top left is portfolio manager. So that's a very popular job role for CFA charter holders. The second biggest bubble is sell-side equity research analyst. That will be someone who does a research report on NVIDIA or Tesla, for example. That's the A in CFA. But you'll notice there are lots of yellow bubbles all over the chart. So it's a very versatile credential. And the reason there are so many yellow bubbles, it's foundational. It's like a fusion between a bachelor's and a master's in finance, basically. So it's great for someone who didn't get a finance degree like myself. I did a law degree in the 1990s in the UK. It's a great way to basically get a finance degree, even if you studied something different at university. So very versatile. opens lots of doors. We saw that on Bloomberg as well. You saw the different job roles on Bloomberg across the Latin American countries. It's a very versatile credential. In terms of where people work, here's a league table. The firm with the most charter holders is UBS with 2,500. But think about it for a minute. Think about where you went to university, and you'll not see anything like this number of charter holders at UBS from your university, I guarantee you. So I went to University of Nottingham in the 1990s in the United Kingdom. There's nothing like 2,500 people from Nottingham at UBS. So it's a very good networking tool when you're inside firms. And if you work at, say, Banco Bradesco in Brazil, for instance, then you'll have lots of people at Banco Bradesco with the CFA to network with, more so than the school you went to. Great networking tool. I'll skip ahead here. Why do people do the CFA program? So first of all, what is the CFA program? So we've taken the world's best textbooks in finance down on the left-hand side there, Fabozzi on fixed income or Hull on derivatives, for example. These are really good books. These are the best respected books in finance. But what they're lacking is they don't have an exam linked to it. There's no way to prove to someone you've read that stack of books and mastered the concepts. So what we did, we built the stack of books on the right, the CFA program, and it has an exam, a secure exam. And so we're able to test people and to see, to make sure they've actually read the books, basically. So that's the service we provide. We provide a testing service to ensure people have read the most important textbooks in finance. That's what the CFA program is. It's very difficult. So here's the pass rate back to 1963 when we started, hovering around 50% mark. So when you think about it, to pass the CFA exam, you've got to pass 3 exams, level 1, 2, 3, 50%, 50%, 50%. It's really hard to get through. And everybody knows this, which is why it gets all the respect it gets, because people know it's really hard and rigorous. So that's what we're probably most famous for, is how hard the exam is. It's a long study experience and it's a difficult exam. In terms of why people do it, I interviewed 300 people back in 2020. I said, why do you do the CFA program? Here's what they said. The number one reason they gave was this thing called signal value. So it's worth talking about what is signal value. What exactly is that? So signal value, CFA is a trademark. So you can't just say CFA after your name if you haven't gone through those exams. So it's a very efficient way to demonstrate to somebody you're smart and hardworking and numerate. So if someone's looking at your CV resume, then it's less risky to interview you if you have passed level 1 of the CFA than if you haven't passed any levels. So it's a really good signaling mechanism in the employment market, basically. It's also great value for money. Go to Harvard Business School, that will cost you $250,000. So we're a master's comparable without spending that sort of money. Another reason people do it is, here's the reason I did it. So remember, I was a law student at university in the 1990s, and I went to HSBC to do equity research. Now, the thing about going to a firm to do equity research is they're not going to teach you fixed income or derivatives because they hire you to do equities, right? So basically, no matter what the firm hires you to do, they're not going to train you on stuff that they didn't hire you to do. So you've got a problem in that if you didn't study them at university, you don't actually know those asset classes. So it's a really good way to kind of cover some areas where your firm will not train you on, basically. Okay, so what do we actually cover in the CFA program then? So it's 3 levels. Level 1, we cover the toolkits, how to read company accounts, how to read economic indicators, for example, basic statistics. Level 2, we teach valuation, which is really signature of the CFA program. All the different asset classes are valued in a different way, and we teach you the different valuation techniques. And then at level 3, you've valued all the securities, you now bring it together into an optimized portfolio, you construct a portfolio. So this is the reason why, by the way, the biggest yellow bubble we saw earlier is portfolio manager, because ultimately we're teaching people to be portfolio managers with the CFA program. In terms of topic weights, here they are across the 3 levels, the percent of questions on the exam related to different topic areas. So you see there's a really big spread of different topics there. And I'll give you an example of how it works, the CFA program. Take fixed income. So there are 500 pages of fixed income at level 1 alone. Half of it's introductory content, half of it's not introductory content. and I'd say half of it's got a high mathematical component. So it's a lot of reading about mathematics, and it's quite advanced when it comes to fixed income level 1. And if you look at level 2, level 3, it's another sort of 500 pages in total with high mathematical content. Very little introductory stuff at level 2, level 3. So that's the way these 10 topic areas spread across the CFA program into these little readings with page count. And you can see it's quite a mathematical program, the CFA program, because finance is mathematical. Okay, let me give an example of a question on the CFA exam. So think about this question yourself. Modified duration is the most appropriate measure of interest rate risk for which of the following? Is it a callable bond, a US Treasury bond, or a mortgage-backed bond? So modified duration, the most appropriate measure of rate risk for which of the three? The answer, by the way, is US Treasury bond. And the reason for that is that modified duration is a shortcut technique to estimate interest rate risk. It only works on what we call vanilla bonds, bonds without funky features like prepayment that you get on mortgage-backed bond or callable. Basically, it's a certain technique you can only use on a vanilla bond. And so I show you this question for a couple of reasons. First of all, look how short the question is. It's a very short question. There are 3 options, A, B, C, on all of our multiple choice questions. And I would argue that, being honest with myself, I probably didn't know the answer to this question the first time I saw it. We really specialize in these sorts of questions. So no answer choice is obviously wrong, which means that even with 3 answer choices, it's pretty hard doing the CFA exam. Okay, how can you take the CFA program? Well, we do have test centers across the whole of Latin America, by the way. I think in most countries, actually, including, I think we opened up just recently in Uruguay. And this is what the exam room looks like. It's got no more than 26 seats in it. You've got the wooden dividers, you've got noise cancelling headphones, and it's computer-based test. So it's quite an intimate setting. In terms of the exam, each level is 4.5 hours. Level 1 is 180 multiple choice questions, ABC. That's all level 1 is. It's just 180 questions. And you click the correct answer, A, B, or C. Level 2, oh, by the way, in terms of the score on that, we've had 1.5 million people ever try level 1. And only 2 people ever have scored a perfect score. So just because it's ABC multiple choice does not mean it's easy. Level 2 is 88 multiple choice questions, but again, a 4.5 hour exam. Why are there so few questions, even though it's a 4.5 hour exam? The reason being, we give you more reading. So we give you 22 professional scenarios or vignettes, and each one of them has 4 multiple choice questions, ABC. Level 3 is different again from level 2. It's half constructive response, half multiple choice. So constructive response means you have to type the answers into the computer. You got a blank page. So different again. The reason we have that, by the way, employers want to know you have communication skills, and they won't know that if you just do a multiple choice exam. Okay, latest innovations quickly. So I'll go through 4 very briefly. First of all, practical skills modules. You don't just do the exam. You also have to do a 15-hour course, 15 hours course alongside it, and you've got a choice. At level 1, you can build a company model from a blank Excel spreadsheet, and we teach you how to do that and make the balance sheet balance. That's a really popular one. Level 2, you can do this thing called analyst skills, where there's the former head of research training at Morgan Stanley. I did a course on things like time management and made it into a course. So we onboarded that. At level 3, you can look at things like the mathematics of portfolio diversification. So you have to do one of these practical skills modules, but we don't pass and fail you on it. There's no passing mark on it. You just need to complete it. Basically, it takes 15 hours. Secondly, Bloomberg, the most popular data platform in the world. We now have woven that through the CFA program curriculum. And we don't test on Bloomberg functions, but it's really nice ancillary learning. Practice pack. So candidates want more official mock exams from us, so we now give them to them. So you get 2 free mock exams when you register, and you can purchase more in a pack. So you can purchase 6 more mock exams at level 1 for $299. The cool thing about these mock exams, they're written by the actual exam team. So they replicate the difficulty of the exam itself, which is really cool. And then finally, pathways. So we realized a few years ago that lots of our charter holders were doing private wealth or private equity. And we thought, wow, we don't teach them much in the curriculum about that. So what we now do, we have flavors of level 3. So there's classic flavor, portfolio management, but 2 new flavors, private markets and private wealth. That enables you to specialize a little bit at level 3, the way you do an accounting credential or an MBA program. You still get the same CFA charter, but about a third of the curriculum exams different based on the choice you make. Okay, I'm actually, Victor, ready to take some questions.
Yes. A ver, los que tengan preguntas, las pueden poner por el chat. What's the most important requirement to take the CFA exam?
Yeah, okay. So, well, there are 3 requirements or prerequisites. So first of all, there's business English, because the exam is in business English. Secondly, there's high school mathematics. So the kind of mathematics you learn when you're 16 years old. And then finally is algebra. So knowing algebraic notation, X, Y, Z, A, B, C, and so on in mathematics. So there's that. The other thing as well, we have this thing called pre-read at level 1. So that's basic statistics, it's basic accounting and basic economics. And so with the reason we have that is that as a pre-read is that we realize most people don't need to read it because most people have already studied that at university. But if you do need to study the basics of statistics, accounting, and economics, we give you those books with registration. So that's, I guess, the 4th prerequisite. So just to recap, it's business English, high school mathematics, algebra, and those 3 pre-read books.
Okay, I have another question. The question is if preparation with AI, such as Copilot, for example, is enough to pass the exam.
I don't think so. I'll tell you why. Because with large language models, they're probabilistic, which means that if you ask it the same question 3 times, you get 3 different answers. That is not the way our exam works. So on our exam, the answers don't change, don't keep changing. And so if you study with AI, let's say you take the curriculum PDF and upload it into Notebook LM and ask Notebook LM to make questions for you, then they are not, because those questions are made by a robot, they're not very good questions, basically. And the way you pass the exam is getting really good at doing questions. You have to basically practice with questions that are correct. As far as I'm aware, AI is not capable right now of formulating questions which are correct.
Okay, another question. Do you recommend a master's degree in finance before or after the CFA exam?
So if you do a master's in finance before the CFA exam, then the good news is you're going to find the CFA exam much easier because you just did a master's in finance. If you do a master's in finance after the CFA exam, you'll find the master's in finance really easy because you just did a CFA program. So they're very complementary, I would say, the 2 of them. In some cases, people will use the CFA program to get into a better master's in finance program than they otherwise would have been able to. So you can use it to kind of get onto a more prestigious master's in finance if you wish. So I think that's a really cool thing to do potentially. So that means that you should do CFA first. I would also say that the average age of someone getting the CFA charter is 28 years old, whereas the average age of someone, let's say, going to business school or an MBA is 28. So naturally, people tend to do CFA program a little bit earlier in life than a master's.
Okay, the next question is, hello, Rob. I come from an IT background, looking to get into IT M&A at some point. Would you recommend CFA as a nice to have to enhance my career?
Well, yeah, I think if you have an IT background, then banks or asset managers will think, well, wait a minute, is this person a finance person? So I think that the benefit of you getting the CFA is you check that box. You basically then say, well, yes, I have an IT background, but I'm actually a finance person. Look at the CFA. So you're going to be more successful in the job search with the CFA than without it, because people think you're not finance oriented because you're an IT person.
Okay, the next question is, I work in a big four firm doing equity valuation and corporate finance in general. I see that most of the people who work in before don't have CFA. Do you think that it's more useful if you work in the capital markets as a PM, for example?
Well, the Big Four is the number one starting place for CFA program candidates. Actually, about 1 in 7 of our people, no, sorry, 7% of people who start the CFA program every year work at the Big Four. And there are people who work at the Big Four who do this thing called transaction advisory services, or TAS, meaning fairness opinions, a private equity fund, purchase, buyouts, and so on. And I think it's incredibly useful there. So it can be very useful for people at the Big Four. And there are quite a few people at the Big Four with CFA. Just go to LinkedIn, you'll find them. Type in KPMG CFA. And you'll see lots of people at KPMG with the CFA, for example. But is it more useful if you work in capital markets? Well, probably, yeah. Because it's more, if you work at a capital markets firm, a greater percent of people will be working in finance than at a Big Four accounting firm where many people work in audit.
Okay, the next question says, how long does it take to complete all 3 levels? And at which pace is it recommended to advance? Should I focus entirely on the CFA, or is it better to do it part-time while working? Tell us about how you did it.
Well, how I did it when I was a full-time person in London and in 2000, 2001, 2002. So I definitely did it during work. And the benefit of doing it while I was working was the HSBC paid. So that being said, I wouldn't say no to a job opportunity for CFA. I would only do that if let's say I had a gap between 2 jobs. Then CFA is a great thing to do in the gap between 2 jobs. So I wouldn't plan your life to, like, I wouldn't optimize around getting 3 times to CFA. I'd optimize around getting experience. Now, but even when you're getting experience, there are cases where you're going to have gaps where you're going to have time for the CFA when you're between jobs. And you asked the question, how long does it take to complete all 3 levels? Well, theoretically, it can take only 15 months, because if you pass level 1 February, you can do level 2 August and do level 3 February. So you can go through really fast. It's not for the faint-hearted. That's quite a big challenge, but you can do it in 15 months if you go through that configuration of winners. February level 1, August level 2, February level 3. At which pace it recommended, it's really up to you. I mean, the big piece of advice people tell me all the time, I say, what would you do differently? They always say, I would have started the CFA program earlier.
Okay, I believe that we have another question here. Is the exam time usually enough for all the questions, or is it also important to be fast?
Yeah, it's usually enough time for all the questions. I always sit our exams all the time. What I will say is one little trick: if a question is taking you too long, just move on, just flag it and move on. And that's good to manage stress in particular, and then do the hard questions at the end.
Okay. I believe we have covered all the questions that we had. I don't know, Rob, if you want to close the webinar with some idea or something to motivate people to take the CFA exam.
Yeah, I just say, hey, look on the Bloomberg terminal. We looked at the names of people, right? In Peru, we looked in Brazil, we looked in Chile. I could have looked in Colombia. I could have looked in any other number of markets in Uruguay, Argentina, Mexico. So we're in lots of countries in Latin America, and there are lots of very prestigious people that work at central banks, portfolio managers, traders, analysts, and so on, all over the region. So it's a great networking tool, and you'll get a lot of benefit from it from a networking perspective. So think about it that way. Think about the names. Go on LinkedIn. Type in CFA Argentina or CFA Chile, for instance, and you'll see the real names of real people and look at their backgrounds. It's very impressive people, and so it's a really good networking device.
Okay. Well, thank you, Rob. It was a pleasure to have you here. And, well, thank you, gracias a todos los que han asistido hoy a este webinar. Espero que les haya servido para entender un poquito más sobre la importancia de la certificación CFA. Y, de todas maneras, no duden en contactarnos si tuviesen alguna pregunta que les salga después. Por mi lado, en nombre de Prep Securities, muchas gracias nuevamente por haber asistido el día de hoy. Que luego les vamos a estar mandando también la grabación para todos los que la quieran. Y bueno, buenas noches. Goodbye.
Goodbye.